अस्सलाम ख़वातीन हज़रात, सुखन के सर्कल ऑफ स्टोरीज़ की जो लेटेस्ट सीज़न है उसकी लेटेस्ट किस्त में आपको खुशामदीद कहते हैं। आप देखते आए हैं, अब तक हम बात करते आ रहे हैं। इस सीज़न में स्पेशली हमने बात की है ख़वातीन के हवाले से, उनकी डिजिटल एम्पावरमेंट के हवाले से हमने कॉन्फ्लिक्ट पे बात की है। सो एक जो मेरे लिए बड़ी खुशी की बात है कि आज हम जिस चीज़ पे बात करने लगे हैं ये अभी तक सुखन की सीरीज़ का पर्टिकुलरली हिस्सा नहीं था, बट दिस इज़ समथिंग जस्ट आई जनरली एडमायर विजुअल आर्ट्स, पेंटिंग। सो वी आर वेरी लकी इन दैट रिगार्ड कि आज हमारे साथ जो हैं वो सना अर्जुमंद मौजूद हैं। सबसे पहले थैंक यू सो मच फॉर गिविंग अस टाइम एंड बीइंग हियर विद अस टुडे।
Thank you for having me here.
So we'll start with the introduction. So she is a contemporary visual artist from Pakistan, जिनका काम locally और internationally बहुत दिखाया गया है. She is a graduate from National College of Arts. She did her graduation in 2005. उनके बाद recently इनको निगाह आर्ट अवार्ड भी मिला है, उस पर भी हम बात करेंगे. समथिंग दैट रियली इंटरेस्ट मी वॉज यू गॉट अ हाई अचीवर अवार्ड इन योर ए लेवल्स इन आर्ट्स एंड सोशियोलॉजी, and I remember my A level, so I was nowhere near getting any award. But इसके अलावा इनके सोलो शोज़ हो चुके हैं ऑल ओवर द वर्ल्ड, न्यूयॉर्क, सिडनी, कोरिया, इटली वगैरह में. ये सारी डिटेल आपको हम आई डोंट वांट टू डू एनी इनजस्टिस, तो ये सारा प्रोफाइल आपको डिस्क्रिप्शन में भी मिलेगा. बट इसके अलावा डिफरेंट पब्लिकेशंस में बुक्स का इनका काम हिस्सा रहा है, डिफरेंट आर्ट शोज़ पे गई हैं. इसके अलावा इनके टॉप 10 राइजिंग स्टार्स इन पाकिस्तान इंडिया उसमें भी इनका नाम था. और आज हम इनसे जो बात करेंगे वो इनसे बात करेंगे इनकी आर्टिस्टिक जर्नी के हवाले से, हर इंस्पायरेशन, इन्फ्लुएंसेस, क्या इकोसिस्टम है पाकिस्तान में इस टाइम आर्टिस्ट्स के लिए, क्या क्रिएटिव प्रोसेस होता है. सो ऑल ऑफ दिस, बट वंस अगेन वेलकम टू द शो. थैंक यू. सो लेट्स स्टार्ट विद द अर्ली डेज, but generally before I move up, so this is a two-part question. First part is that how early experiences and surroundings influence एक आर्टिस्ट का विजन. एंड सेकेंडली इसी मैं रिलेट करूँगा कि वील टेक योर केस स्टडी एज अ पर्सनल एक्सपीरियंस कि उसमें ग्रोइंग अप इन कराची एंड देन मूविंग टू लाहौर यू वर एक्सपोज टू डिफरेंट कम्युनिटीज़, कल्चर्स, एंड आपका माशाल्लाह घर से भी एक पीछे एक रुझान था. सो व्हेन ऑल ऑफ दिस थिंग्स केम टुगेदर, तो वो क्या जर्नी रही, एंड अदरवाइज़ भी क्या एक्सपीरियंसेस और अर्ली जो आपके सराउंडिंग्स होती हैं उनका इम्पैक्ट होता है आर्टिस्ट के ऊपर.
Impact तो होता है, especially for someone like me who's, having inspirations from my own personal journey. So, when I was growing up, my father was a painter. My father has a gallery today. My mother was also painting. My mother experimented in a lot of mediums. So, one of my earliest memories is going to Vamik. It's a place in Karachi with my mother, and sitting under a table where she was preparing a silk screen print. And I remember looking up, and it was of this maroon burgundy color, and I was looking up and watching her make the screen print through the net of it. And I remember that my mother used to take me to those classes in Vamik, and that's how I started looking at other people also. Later on, my father and my mother, they both, whenever they had the opportunity, I think they kind of kept introducing us to different mediums. I remember this first trip to Rawal Lake, because we eventually moved from Karachi to Islamabad. And my father, he picked up some clay and he sculpted a small doll, and he showed me how to make a little doll from that clay. उन्होंने उधर से he got some grass and he put some hair on her, and that was really interesting. These memories that I have of my mother sitting and making these glass paintings and silk paintings. So I do think that they have imprinted in my being somewhere, which is what brought me here today.
Any other outside your family influences, experiences?
When I was growing up, my father used to take us to a lot of shows. And unme se one of the things that he really spoke about was Sadikan. And we had paintings of Sadikan in our house. We had a really interesting embroidery piece by an artist from Australia who also is my father's aunt. And so a lot of like these influences while growing up, but especially Sadikan, because I remember being taken to Ferrer Hall and looking at the ceiling over there for a long time. So that was something that did affect me quite a bit. And when I think when I was coming to NCA, then I started looking at a lot of other artists that also influenced my journey, and some of them like Amrita Shergill, we have Frida Kahlo. I've actually seen Frida Kahlo's work at the Tate when they were showing her retrospective. And so somewhere along the line, I also really enjoyed Andy Warhol. So it was a lot of like a mix of Eastern and Western influences, because primarily initially there were a lot of Mughal influences in my work. You know that when I started painting, actually I used to make the borders of the Mughal painting, I used to copy those, and elephants. So that's how I started painting. And what I started doing was cutting Mughal paintings and collaging them in bits and pieces, and that became my initial memory of experimenting with work. And then I had a teacher in Islamabad. So सबसे पहले what happened was that my father introduced me to RM Naeem, and RM Naeem kind of opened this door towards looking at art in a way that just be free to experiment initially, before coming to NCA. This is before that. And through that process, I started experimenting with Mughal miniature and cutting it and collaging it. And then my father, when he said, I think you're really good at art, and also like you said, I had gotten this award. So then we tried for Indus Valley and NCA, and I got in at NCA. I also had a teacher in Islamabad, Mansoor Ahi, who passed away recently. He's also a very big name in the art scene. So him and his wife, they both are, at that time, they both were teaching A-level art. So I took classes with them for 2 years.
So coming to NCA, these were your formative years, as you can say. So when you were coming to NCA, you were sure कि हमने painting में करना है आगे degree?
I really wanted to do that. I wanted to paint. I wanted to experience this freedom. Basically, when you are a graphic designer or an interior designer, your palette is not blank. You still have to kind of meet somebody's, this thing. So architecture is also like that for to some extent, So for me, I wanted that freedom that nobody is telling me what to do, and in a way, I enter a space where I am looking at a canvas where I can just freely keep experiencing something new every day, day after day, right? It's also kind of semi-terrifying, but it's also because, every time, even after 20 years of painting, you look at a canvas and you're like, what am I supposed to do? So there's always that couple of minutes. Yeah, you're like, again, like I have to process these feelings again. But, but that feeling of being free, that I can take this anywhere, I can finish this at any point, is just amazing.
Right. Yeah. So, आपने इसलिए mention किया कि you grew up in Karachi, then you moved to Islamabad as well.
Yeah.
Early age, but then you spent your time in NC as well, and now mashallah you have been in this system for the long time. So if I was to ask you, is there any difference between these three cities जो आपका artistic experience है, if you are not being too controversial, but generally speaking,
artistic experience से, yeah, I mean, well, Lahore has recently really picked up. Initially, Karachi was the hub, right? Karachi was like basically all the upcoming new artists wanted to show in Karachi, right? And that's where it started kind of like, you knew that that's where growth was, right? But Lahore recently has, there's this new gallery, O Art Space, now there's Art Soch, Art Next, Numaishgah, there's like in a couple of years, like 6, 7 galleries have opened up, right? And so there's like this whole uh, now kind of atmosphere that is being created in Lahore, where people from Karachi want to show in Lahore now. So the page has kind of turned in past few years. You see a lot of, like, every other show in Lahore will be from an artist in Karachi. So, but you know, all in all, I still feel like as belonging from the country, I feel like my work should be shown everywhere. And there are a lot of also, you know, people in Karachi who you talk to and you have an exchange, and you know, you always have this new kind of ideas from them. And the artists in Karachi, the art community there, I've got very good friends in Karachi, and so usme ye hai ki when they come here, they they know it's like another home, and when I go there, that's like another home. So I wouldn't say this or that, like that's one of those things ke I would include Islamabad as it's also growing in terms of art now.
जैसे आपने mention किया ना, the important thing is that there are systems in place. So if anyone who wants to showcase their work from Karachi to Lahore to Islamabad, there are places there. There are people who are connected with each other. So that's more important. It's not a competition. It's basically going together.
Yeah.
So इसलिए यहाँ से चलिए moving on to the kind of themes you have shown in your work. So that includes gender, politics, religions. Now these, especially for a layman like me, they are complex undertakings. And so what are some of the personal experience, if there are any observations that spark your interest, this is something I'm going to talk about later on, add it to the Sufi mystic. So generally when I was looking at your work, there's some of the mystic creature, unseen, unheard. This is one of the themes that I was able to extract from it. So just wanted to know more about that. Why these particular themes? Was there a thought process? Is this something that naturally evolved out of your work?
It's been a journey. It's been quite a journey actually, because initially my themes, like you said, were politics, and when we say gender, the term feminism comes right in front. And I think that even when you have a sense of women rights, you evolve in that, right? You evolve, and you evolve in a way where you realize that rights are rights. It's like a bigger term, right? And so for me, as like I told you in the beginning, that a lot of my inspiration was coming from my surrounding. So as I was growing, my surrounding was also changing. And in terms of painting on politics and gender and all of that, I felt like the thing that happened with me was that initially I was reflecting outside, and then the questions started becoming about me, and it kind of turned from the outside to inside. And I started asking myself that how do I feel in this space? How am I sort of connecting with where I have been placed? Because I don't believe in coincidence. I believe in that you've been placed in a place because you have to learn something, and that place and that situation will change the day you've learned it, and then another situation will arrive, right? So when this journey was happening, I was getting a lot of popularity, and sometimes it's really fun, but sometimes I was actually lucky to stop and think that, do I want to carry on being known as this? And if you've noticed, I was using the symbology of the crescent and star, and I was also using the flag and these symbols. So I kind of stopped, and I asked myself that, do I keep on to painting this dark reflection of the society that has problems, or do I actually want to see another side of life? And I was lucky enough to meet friends who were also questioning. So we could question together, and we found a teacher who would help us, like a spiritual teacher. And so when we started going to these spiritual talks, it really felt like the identities that we were holding on to were kind of like a baggage. And the process of spirituality is such that you kind of dissect and you deduct. In the sense, you when you meet this version of yourself, you kind of negate it and you say, okay, no, not this, because there is like years and years of creating an image, right? From your childhood to like whatever day you realize that I have been putting on all these images and identities to be here today, you basically start to deduct that, and in this process of deduction, you kind of become a watchman, and you watch yourself as a you kind of witness. The right word is witnessing, and you start witnessing that right now I'm playing out this identity. So it's really interesting because we get so attached to our anger and to the seven things that they say are the sins and all. So we get really attached. Oh, I was jealous, I was this, and then you realize that these are identities and these are versions of the being that you can kind of somehow create a space with. And when that space is given, it allows you to look at a different side of life. And when you start looking at that kind of side of life, that it's so much larger, we actually don't know कि यहाँ से पहले where we came from and यहाँ के बाद where we're going. So in that place of not knowing, there is kind of like, okay, so I'm actually not in control of anything, and there is kind of a peace in that. Okay, so then if I'm not in control of anything, why am I kind of holding on to this, identity or this memory or this pain or whatever anybody could be going through, right? And I think that all the suffering kind of comes from there. And now going back to my previous work, which was reflecting on the suffering of society, it kind of made me get that space. Also, I started becoming really aware of how I was using the crescent and star, and I don't want to use it in that way. Like, it kind of, as I evolved, it kind of became sacred for me, and it symbolizes much more now than it was symbolizing, and it became this part of me started to feel the need to paint things or reflect on subjects that were from the other place, So, like, for example, when I stopped making this, I had a time period where I was just completely blank, and I was like, what am I supposed to make? And I was sitting outside, I had this door open, and I was looking out I was in Islamabad, and I was looking out at the Margla Hills, and this bird came and sat on the railing. It was a hudud. And it just, that moment of that exchange, I think it made such an impact on me that I realized that this idea of human life that we have is really restricted. And the idea of being life is higher than human life. Like, from human to human, there is this tension, there is this, this exchange that we are kind of, we've downloaded information about other people in which judgments come, in which all these things come. But when we kind of like create that space that let's just look at everything from a perspective of energetic being, that starts to really create a space for us to explore existence. And then you will look at a plant in a different way, you will look at a bird in a different way, you will start looking at people in different ways. Like, now when you look at someone, you want to look at them not for their physical form, you want to just be aware, okay, being to being, like that, So a lot of things come up like that in my work. A lot of the imagery in my work, especially the bird, it reflects that higher being. It reflects that exchange of that we don't know what creation is. There's so much to explore. There's so much to also detach from and be free from. There's so much freedom to experience that we're not experiencing. So for me, that part of life is something that I'm interested in.
So my next question, obviously, I think it becomes the obvious next question is that when you start a piece, you have something in mind, and then you finally when you finish it, is it the same thing, or you actually go through all of this process during that particular experience as well? Because you start, I'm assuming that you start with a point, as you said, कि अच्छा मैंने ये करने लगी हूँ या ये this man, and by the end, are you still there, or you have learned a lot more and changed into something different?
I have learned a lot more when in the process of painting, but I think that there are two paths that I take. Sometimes I'll have an idea and I will sketch it on my phone, and I'll keep it for painting onto a bigger surface. And sometimes I'll have an idea when I'm looking at a blank canvas and I'm like, what am I supposed to make? Somewhere I feel like the connection is drawn because they're coming from me. I still give myself the freedom to experiment. So I am not stuck to a formula. I feel that sometimes just letting go and putting paint and just seeing where it goes also helps. That's why I don't know how things are going to turn out, and I kind of have to just watch what I'm doing, like witnessing and seeing what's coming out. So that's one way, and sometimes I know exactly I have to make this on a bigger scale.
Right. And sometimes it doesn't work out.
Sometimes it doesn't work out. Sometimes I go back and I actually just feel like the work that I've made is just nonsense and I destroy it.
Or it never sees the day of light.
Yeah,
Right.
I have done that. I have gone into my studio and put work apart and just said that this should not go anywhere.
No, that you mentioned that you are always open to experimentation.
Yeah.
During my research, I also saw that you have worked on, for example, NFTs पे भी आपने काम
Yeah.
किया है. You have done painting. So my question is that how do you integrate your different mediums into and techniques into your work? Is there a particular pattern? Painting obviously is one, but any other mediums that you are using or you want to use to express yourself?
The one thing I've recently become really interested in is sculpture. So I made these forms in clay. I recently had a show in Karachi at the Chokandi Gallery. The show was titled Special. And usme phir I just made these forms, these bird forms in clay, and they were relief sculptures that were on the wall, and it had calligraphy words on it, but it didn't, like, they weren't like words, they were alphabets. So it was about how like there is a place within us that is beyond words, beyond definition, and a place to visit that's about just easing into not using language, right? Like before, when we were born, we didn't know how to speak while space, right? Because that was a place that our consciousness was sitting in. So the idea of the piece was that the birds would kind of leave with the words, that this growth of being would wash off words. And so sculpture was something, and talking about NFTs, that was my first, and my paintings were turned into NFTs.
Right. But the good thing, and I say the appreciation में बात करें वो ये कि you basically want to integrate and you want to accept and explore the new mediums and techniques, because one of the things that I've generally seen and experienced is कि कुछ हम stuck हो जाते हैं अपने ज़माने में या अपने टाइम पे कि इससे आगे नहीं जाना, जिस तरह हम करते थे या हम करते आए हैं हम वही करेंगे. ऑफन सी दैट इन द राइटर्स एट टाइम्स, तो वो फिर आहिस्ता आहिस्ता मुश्किल हो जाता है उनके लिए. अब छोटी सी एग्जांपल यहीं पे मैं कोट कर देता हूँ. अमजद साहब हु रिसेंटली पास्ड अवे, सो ही वाज द पर्सन हु रोट आवर कॉमिक बुक. So generally if I say कि अमजद साहब तो वारिस ड्रामा पोइट्री and you all of these things come to your mind, but he was very open to the idea कि अच्छा comic book कैसे लिखते हैं, and he actually wrote one and it was a very good one. So that always gave me an inspiration कि no matter wherever you are in your stage, you should keep on learning and you should keep experimenting and you should at least try new things, not just to stay relevant in time but also for your own learning as well. So that's really good. अच्छा एक अभी जिस तरह अब आपने इनको explain किया, so another question would be that when you are actually creating that space, you said कि आप internal conversation थी, internal dialogue था. So do you think और do you expect कि ये convey हो जाएगा, interpret कर सकेगा जो बाकी viewer है जो उसको देखने आ रहे हैं आपके art piece को, और it is something independent of that and happens doesn't happen?
Interestingly, recently someone said that how do you expect people to understand this? So when they commented that, I was like, I want people to understand this. But then I said, but why do I want people to understand this? I kind of like negated myself in this in the next second that I said that. And the point is that it comes back to this, that sometimes you really do want people to understand things, but sometimes I think what's more important is for you to do what you want to do. And especially being an artist, I think that my first responsibility would be to do what I want to do, and then my second, I think, at this point, and it might not be the same after, let's say, a year or 2 years, because like you said, one should be open to growth and change, and so I keep that in mind. But right now, I feel that this is a phase that I'm going through, in which I feel that I'm going to just take out whatever I feel like taking out in my canvases.
Right.
Yeah.
But my follow-up question would be, if you want to convey these kind of abstract or spiritual topics through your visual art, so how hard is it, and how can you manage or navigate that so it reaches out with the purpose that it should reach out, that particular message or theme should reach out to a layman like me?
Well, it's not completely easy,
Right.
and sometimes it's not hard. Well, it depends on how honest I'm being with myself. When I'm in the studio and I find myself in a place where I can completely just make a piece that comes from a place of, like an honest place of sitting with comfort with myself, I feel like that piece is understood in a better way. And then there are times when I'm like, oh, what should I make, and how is this like there is a concept, and then I want to follow the concept and try to come up with something that's not completely sitting with me in a place. So I kind of have to go in a place of awareness at that time, and more so with time. And there are times I'm just really simply putting something that I felt in a very honest way, and people understand that. There was a painting that I made called Flowers and Fears, and there were just two paintings. It was called Flowers and Fears, and the other one was called Hope and Fear. So flowers were depicting hope, right? And fear was obviously the fear that we all face in different faces and different ways and different words and different forms. And I made this figure standing in the middle and surrounded by fears. It was a large red canvas, and somehow when I was making that painting, I was like, I don't know how this piece of art will add anything to the existing amount of art in the world. But for me at that time, I think it was a really important thing to sort of make, because it's something that we all experience. I do think that the fear is something I think we need to all sit and look at every day and face every day. I think that there should be like 5 minutes of that day where you sit and you're like, okay, I want to look at this fear, you know. So, and that was a painting that was understood by many. So,
Lastly, you are also involved with your father, of course, in contributing the ecosystem for upcoming artists as well. You also recently initiated an award as well. So I just wanted to know, for any upcoming artists, what is the ecosystem currently? What are the support systems, if there are any? What more needs to be done to inculcate this kind of culture है जो said कि लाहौर में grow हो रहा है, so बाकी भी शहरों में बाकी शहरों में पाकिस्तान के एक general awareness हो. So just your comment on that as an artist who is working here and someone who is also contributing the ecosystem.
so Gallery 6 has taken out this, Gallery 6 has initiated this art award, and it's called Arjumand Painting Award, and every year they get hundreds of submissions for that. I am a board member on that, and we view all the submissions from the beginning, and then in the final selection team, I'm also on that. When I'm not actively involved in the gallery, because obviously the gallery is in Islamabad and I am in Lahore, so I do one show a year. I curate that show, and it's this year we had a show for the upcoming and younger contemporary artists, right? And now more actively Gallery 6 is showing a lot of the upcoming and younger artists, so that's their thing. Initially when Gallery 6 was being established, they were very actively supporting students at NCA so that they could show their work while they were students to support themselves. So they have played multiple roles. Like Gallery 6 now offers basically, because they have connections with the East West Center in Hawaii, they offer scholarships for masters in Hawaii. So even this year they will be offering a scholarship. I think it's in visual arts, and already I think about 3 people have gone for this through the gallery, and uske alawa they are also taking shows to different countries. Like they took a show to Hawaii, then they also showed somewhere else. I believe it was in India at that time, and so multiple different activities do keep happening, and it's an ongoing thing. I think they keep brainstorming. There's a team. The team keeps brainstorming for the next upcoming project. They were funding a residency program in collaboration with RM Studio, and another good thing that we do at Gallery 6 is that there is kind of like an equilibrium for the male artists and the female artists. So for the previous show we had an equal number for male and female artists, for the residency also, and this is something that they've been carrying on, which is I think commendable, and pushing the female artists forward. It's
Yeah. And I think these basically जो आपने चीज़ों का जिक्र किया, इसी तरह की चीज़ें और भी होनी चाहिए different scale and different जगहों पे, which could help the young artist, if I'm not mistaken.
The thing is that there are artists right now sitting probably like in places that is not Islamabad, Lahore and Karachi, let's say anywhere else in the suburbs, right? So what happens is that when we see that there is an artist, let's say from Jamshoro, we will want that artist to be a part of a show or be a part of the exhibition of Arjumand Painting Award. That is something that really that we focus on. That when the entries come, we want to represent the areas that are not being represented. And when we had entries come in this time, I believe there were like 19 different institutes that were it was not just NCA or Indus Valley or Punjab University. It was like a wider range of institutes from different areas.
So I think at this point I would like to thank you for taking out time. It was a very very insightful conversation for someone like me जो generally इस तरह की हम बात नहीं करते, but I got to know and understand a lot of things, and I really appreciate the work you do. If me or Sukhan can be of any help in any capacity, we are always there to support you in any of that initiative. But thank you for taking out time and sharing your insights with us.
Well, thank you for having me here. And this is a brilliant initiative that you've taken, and especially inviting artists, because I'm going to share a little event in my life that happened. I was sitting in a waiting room, and over there was a lady next to me, and you know how these conversations start, कि आप क्या करती हैं and all. So I told her that she asked me, आपने क्या पढ़ा हुआ है? So I said fine arts. And she said, "Acha, mashallah, finance." So there was like a 2-minute second where I was like, should I correct her or should I not? And then I was like, मैंने fine arts पढ़ा हुआ है. And then it's just suddenly like that level of, that impression. I just saw it fade away, and I was like, what? Like, how am I disappearing? How is my image disappearing? But it kind of also gave me that thing that it's not, it's something that needs to be sort of spread and spoken about and told to people that.
आप सही कह रहे मैंने फाइनेंस ही पढ़ा हुआ है, माई बेस्टेस्ट इन फाइनेंस. और अगर मैं उस टाइम अपने अब्बा को जाके कहता मुझे फाइन आर्ट्स पढ़ना है तो मुझे भी प्रॉब्ली ऐसी लोग ही देते वो. बट दिस अनफॉर्चुनेटली इज करंटली, आई थिंक थिंग्स हैव इम्प्रूव्ड. नाउ वी हैव डिग्रीज इन एंथ्रोपोलॉजी, but yeah, as a society we are still far off where we need to respect these as not just profession, but this is an actually art, so we need to learn and appreciate art. Somehow sorry बात थोड़ी distract हो रही, but somehow I think we used to, and we have lost that. मुझे कभी कभी फीलिंग आती है कि back in the day probably people were more receptive to arts and culture, like 60s maybe before that, and now it's like a very confined space and doesn't really get into the mainstream discussions.
Bilkul, because I feel like there is a lot of potential here that is kind of not being seen because of the lack of perspective, and the fact that how much fine arts could actually contribute to the finance of this country and the economy. This is not being explored. And the day this government actually realized this, or any other, or the previous, I'm not pointing fingers, so any day that they wake up to this idea that what kind of fine arts can bring in, they will actually start supporting, and this will grow. Like we said, that the newer artists will get more ecosystem.
You're totally right. अब इसमें again, just adding the last point, but Fatima Bhutto's latest book actually talked about it. So I'm the content guy, so I'll be giving you those kind of references. Yeah. But K-pop, the BTS from Korea, they are contributing hugely to the Turkish dramas. They are huge part of their financial economy. So they are using these mediums. The Bollywood, for example, India, it's a huge industry. So even though they are not the hardcore doctor, engineer professions, but they are big contributor, and they have realized that they are going to play a big part in our economy, and they are actually boosting and promoting and setting up those ecosystems, so the thing keeps on going, and it keeps up contributing. But I do plan to invite more and more artists here, and I want to make it a space where we can have these conversations, we can explore the work, we can showcase the work, and do the little contribution we can at this stage. So fingers crossed. But thank you for being here and talking to us. And at this point, I'll take your leave. So until next time, Khuda Hafiz.